Hey, Scott from mygrowthrings.com. Here once again is in my apartment. But I'm back today, joined by yet another legend of Shopsmith. Some of you probably need no introduction to this gentleman, but I'll tell you, he's been on, I don't know how many YouTube channels demonstrating either the Mark V or some variation of the Shopsmith line. He's been in Shopsmith's official videos on setting up and aligning equipment. He's sold Shopsmith equipment all over the United States, and for all I know, maybe even outside of the United States. We'll get into that. But just I want to share the screen here with Mr. Michael Young or Mike Young. How do you like to be introduced or referred to, Mike? What does your
It's
mom
Mike
call you?
Young. Yeah. Well, my mother called me a lot. She was German, and depending on how bad I was that day, she'd call me all kinds of things in German. But mostly Michael, spelled Mickel, the German thing. But I think on my Social Security, it's the normal Michael. But Mike is good. That's what I've always gone with, the short version.
Very good. Now, I will get around to asking you about your YouTube channel, which is new and I think really good. But let's start maybe a little bit further back. What was your original connection to Shopsmith? How did you wind up where you are?
I originally answered a ad in our local Idaho Statesman newspaper. It was calling for an instructor in woodworking to travel the countryside. And I met up with, at that time, Shopsmith had regional sales managers. A gentleman still not living too far from me by the name of Jim Myers. You might remember him, Scott. He had a lot of different roles he had a lot of roles with Shopsmith, but when I met up with him, he was hiring for sales reps. And in this particular instance, he was looking for an instructor to travel the countryside to teach owners how to use their equipment. So that was my actual first job with Shopsmith as an instructor.
And this was when?
83, 84.
Okay,
yep.
So you do predate my time there. I started in 87. And then you always travel? Were you always doing that role?
You know what? In my adult life, I've always traveled. Before Shopsmith, I traveled. I sold toilet paper and things like that. But before that, even right after my undergraduate work, I hooked up with a outfit called National School Assemblies. I was an entertainer. I was a professional mime. So I would travel around the countryside. These people were based out of Hollywood, California. I had an agent. They'd book you in high schools and junior colleges and colleges. And I'd go do my hour and a half stage show, come back the next day to the same location to their theater departments or drama departments and give classes. But I traveled the entire countryside back then when I was really, really young, like I say, right out of undergrad. So 20, 21 years old.
So that was probably during the Shields and Yarnell and Marcel Marceau days then.
I know. Well, did a lot of study with Marceau and knew Robert Shields very well as Yarnell. Oh, yeah.
Wow,
exactly. Very good.
Well, I have friends that were also mimes, and so they
really?
plugged me in. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Absolutely. They were from Dayton as well. I'm surprised that neither of them ever got connected to Shopsmith.
A lot of mimes.
Yeah. Well, when you're going to stand up in front of people and present something, it does require a little bit of a showman, right? I mean, you kind of have to put aside your troubles of the day and give it your all, and that's selling Shopsmith or doing a show with mime makeup, I guess.
No, I always said that kind of the downside to my job for 38 years now is you got to be two different people. I'm my person you're seeing right now, and then I'm somebody different for the most part when I'm doing just a sales presentation for Shopsmith. Although mine was always different because it was more educational than hardcore selling with, lots of closing and things like that. that's what Shopsmith always kind of liked about me, is I didn't hardcore sell. I combined teaching with selling, made it really work well, to the point where there isn't anybody now that sold more Shopsmith equipment as far as a rep than myself.
Wow, that's amazing. Now you're still selling.
I still don't call I don't call myself a salesman. Never have with Shopsmith. An instructor. The star's always been the machine.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned in the United States. Now, of course, with YouTube, you're seen everywhere in the world. But have you traveled outside of the U.S. doing presentations for Shopsmith?
There was a time I was sent to. We had a Canadian outfit out of Mississauga,
Yes.
Ontario, and they had reps, Canadian reps also. And I was able to work a couple of years with one gentleman, Tommy was his name. And we worked from Vancouver on the West Coast all the way to Toronto on the East Coast, Edmonton. And of course, they have big fairs too, Klondike Days and Calgary Stampede. I did all of that. Up there at that time, it was a little different. I couldn't write orders. It was against the law because I was a U.S. citizen. But Tommy could because he was a Canadian citizen. So I did all the demonstration. He did all the writing of orders and the selling of the product. And we did also seminars, also training seminars for owners across the Canadian countryside as well.
So prior to Shopsmith, had you had woodworking experience?
I had, I did the junior high school woodworking shop classes and things like that. I started making some real money when I started buying and flipping houses way before the buying and flipping houses craze was known. So I kind of had to learn to do things for myself. I wouldn't call myself a professional woodworker, but a lot of experience doing woodworking out of necessity. I'd learned how to do things. I always wanted a sailboat as one example. This is early on. I couldn't afford a sailboat. There was a boat dealer not far from me. I drove by. This got to be, I don't know, mid 70s, late 70s. I just loved this sailboat. It was like a little 17-foot thing. And I wanted to buy it, but he wouldn't deal. He wouldn't bring the price down. I finally got mad and said, I'm just going to go build one. So I went off and took 2-3 years and I built almost exact duplicate of this sailboat. And out of spite, I guess, I didn't need anything, but I drove the boat to this guy's yard. And I said, I just needed a little sail connector or something like that. And he said, where'd you get that boat? I said, because he remembered me. I said, I told you I was going to build it. That's what I built. And we became really good friends. And he actually taught me how to sail. So that's how I've learned how to do working. Like most people, out of necessity.
That's fantastic. Do you remember the Shopsmith hydroplane?
Oh yeah, I have pictures of that. I run on my intro to my every week's sales presentation Zooms. Oh yeah, absolutely. That was something else. It won its class, I understand, for 2 or 3 years. There's like one class below, like the big boys, the Miss Budweiser and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember the airplane?
I guess I don't.
There was a little one-seater airplane. They had plans. I don't know if I think the plans were in Hands-On magazine, but it actually won its class at the Reno Air Show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the plans were in Hands-On magazine, I believe.
Oh, I don't think I remember that. Well, that's amazing.
I saw a lot of I saw pictures. I wish I would have saved those back then. A lot of pictures of half-finished airplanes that they didn't put an engine in them, and they hung them from a great big tree and used them as a swing for a kid. That stands out in my mind, But yeah, they had the airplane, they had the hydroplane. A lot of neat things built on a Shopsmith.
Absolutely right. Yep. So, okay, so let's talk about one really important part of history, and I think that's kind of what got me thinking about talking to you and talking to Doug. As you may have seen, I did a video where I took an old video that happened to star you, and there was a line in there about how what was the word?
The expertise is in the machine.
The expertise,
not the skill, Roy Underhill. It's the expertise is built. The expertise is built right into the machine.
Well, thanks, Brian. I'm going to tell you right up front that I owe the quality of my work all to the Shopsmith Mark V. Anyone can get professional results because the expertise is built right in.
What did you mean by that, Mike? And do you stand by that?
I do stand by that. Those were not my words, though. So
Okay.
first of all, let's get this whole story. That infomercial was done in 1993. We ran that thing for over 15 years, and it did its job. It sold lots and lots of machinery. It was written by a script writer out of California. The infomercial was filmed in Cincinnati, I believe. Yeah, Cincinnati. It took 7 days. Fancy set, the whole thing. That's all done by a set. Very first class, a lot of money to do it. We weren't really allowed to change much of the wording in the script, but and to be honest with you, when I was doing it, I didn't think much of a lot of the wording. We didn't like some of the wording. Brian Keller was the co-host of that infomercial. He had the good voice and all that kind of stuff. But no, I stand by the expertise is built into the equipment. After, and this is something you mentioned too, you've taken some time to set up the equipment. People don't take the time to read the manuals. I think Doug mentioned this too, to actually, there's no machine that comes in ready to go. Any kind of woodworking machine. I don't care if it's a hand drill, a hand saw, a table saw. It needs to be set up. It needs to be aligned. It needs to be checked. On the Shopsmith, I can honestly say with all the years of using other equipment to compare the Shopsmith to, once you get this Shopsmith set up, number one, it stays set up much longer than most. And once it is set up, it does become the expert. If I need a 21-degree cut, if I've set that miter gauge right, the table saw set up right, I get 21 degrees. I don't have to be the expert anymore. The machinery becomes the expert. If I walk over with my antique block plane, I can joint a board to a straight edge, but it takes a lot longer than just walking over to that joiner, set up on the Shopsmith, and one pass, I got a straight edge. Only after that joiner's table and fence has been set properly, then it becomes the expert. So it takes the skill of the user to be able to understand the manuals, understand the importance of taking the time to align and adjust and know how to make adjustments. Then the machinery does become the expert. It really does.
Yeah,
I always like to talk about, in woodworking, I like to talk about the art of the project. To me, that's more important, is the art of the project. Any piece that I look at, there's an artistry to it, and then you go into the skill required to do it and the expertise required to make that art.
Yeah, it's interesting you'd say that. I have sisters that are quite artistic. They have vision that I don't have. I can make things that somebody else designs. I just cannot design it. I don't see it like they do. And that it's funny because they're impressed with my skill, and I feel like my skill is like being a musician that doesn't have any sheet music.
Exactly. Yes.
Give me something to play.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So we talked a little bit about this before we started the camera. I would love to hear more about your endeavors in education, because what you're talking about here is being able to read that manual, being able to comprehend the manual is easy for some people, difficult for others, which is why I find YouTube, and even back in the old days, our VHS tapes were so valuable, because some people, that's the way they learn. They're visual learners, they're auditory learners. Tell me a little bit about what you've been doing in continuing your education.
Well, I noticed many years ago that, number one, people don't like to read manuals. They preferred to see things being done. So that's where we were big in VHS tapes, as you know, for years and years and years. And then they converted a lot of them into CDs. But learners learn most, especially adult learners, learn most by doing. So that's where my interest in the education and learning how to teach people how to learn by doing became kind of my main motivation with doctoral studies. I'm in a program that's what we deal with, is adult learners only, and their best methods of learning, which is kinesthetic, touch, In fact, my emphasis in my doctoral dissertation is object-based learning, touch, tactile learning, which to me is what woodworking is all about. The touch of the wood, the touch of the machinery, how they combine each other. So I've made it a point to specifically learn methods of teaching adult learners how to operate their machinery, how to learn how to use their machinery, where we can, eliminate trying to read and do the old traditional types of learning. Traditional teaching is kind of old school. We need to move beyond that and move into things like we're talking about right now is the tactile type learning and the kinesthetic type learning. So that's why I do this, because I think it makes me a better salesperson. I've noticed that just from graduate school to now, my sales have increased exponentially because of the way I approach my prospects, my owners, my customers. I just have a better way to help them learn and to understand that they can do this, or, bring them up to the next level of their own skills and expertise. That makes sense?
Have you been able to travel and do live presentations in these COVID days here, or have it been entirely virtual?
Well, no, my COVID or my travel days ended March 19th. I'll tell you the exact date. Because I was scheduled out 18 months at a time. And that's when I was doing strictly Lowe's, but all across the country. So COVID started the end of 2019, 2020. It was March 19th. I think it was 2020.
Yeah, 2020.
I just finished what I called my winter run. My winter run would always start about the 28th of December. I'd head down to Arizona. I'm trying to avoid the winter now, okay? And I'd hit Tucson and Phoenix, Lowe's, hit a little bit of California, San Diego area, then shoot over to El Paso, blah, 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 and work 3 months. I'd be gone 3 months at a time, by the way, for the last 10 years. And then I came back through Kansas, Oklahoma, back into Boise, where I live most of the time, on March 19th. I was going to be a week off and head up to what we call the spring run, which is always the northwestern states, Washington, Oregon, Montana. But Washington State shut down. You're not allowed to come in here. COVID is this bad now. So that's when I was done. I never thought my traveling days would end that abrupt or because of that reason, a pandemic, but it ended. So I sat on my butt for about a month. And somebody said, I think my next door neighbor, actually, he's an IT guy, says, well, why can't you do demonstrations via Zoom? And I said, what's Zoom? I had no idea what Zoom was. He says, you might want to look at this, Mike. So I spent the next month reading, learning about Zoom. I said, well, this might work, but think about what we just talked about, tactile learning, touch. I said, this is good. They can see it live. They can see it real time. What they can't do is actually touch the machine and see that there's very little vibration. They can't hear the machine with their real ears. They can't smell the wood being cut. They can't smell the machine. I said, I don't know if that'll work. Says, you might want to try that though. So I tried it. And it was a stumbling mess the first day. We had all kinds of internet issues. I didn't have enough Wi-Fi power or whatever you call it. So it just kind of crashed, but we sold equipment. Still sold equipment. I mean, very substantial dollars worth of equipment. I said, well, this might work. So then we took another month, so 3 months into this, and we converted this space into basically a TV studio with cameras. And we got all the fancy studio lights and all that stuff going on here right now. So everything's perfect. And, microphones and all this stuff. And it's just gotten better and better and better. I'm now doing via Zoom better than I did going in person out to different locations. And I'm seeing people from a broader, I go into Albuquerque, that's who I'd see is Albuquerque people. I'd go to Dallas, I'd see Dallas. But now in any given week, I've got them East Coast, Midwest, West Coast. On Thursdays, I got 30, 35 people from all over the country. Friday, the same thing. And what's nice is the way I actually place orders or take orders or get orders or sell, whatever you want to call it. If they're interested in anything, they simply email me at the end of the presentation. I pick up the phone and we actually can chat.
Oh, nice.
So old school, I'm talking to the people, and our owners, they want that personal attention. And I've always thought that's what a demonstration did. It was personal attention. I'm demonstrating to you live. I'm doing the same thing. And then on the phone, I'm actually able to answer their more specific questions one-on-one. We get to know each other. It's the old thing, they buy from who they like. Obviously, they get to like me, and we make a transaction.
That's great.
I almost hate to say this, but it's an upside of COVID. It's been really a windfall for me. And I know it's been a windfall for other people that have been able to adapt to this thing that's really kind of made a mess out of economies and, the way we live. But we made it work. I made it work.
So, Mike, I'm a corporate trainer for a German company that's in the hardware industry, hardware for cabinets and furniture. And while most of the industry was just gutted, the closet industry has taken off. And I theorize it's partially because people finally got all their laundry done and realized they had no place to put it. But home organization is one of those things that do-it-yourselfers can do. You can make an organizer for your kitchen drawer and begin to optimize that space. And I would imagine some of the folks you're talking to, they're trapped at home. They need to make the best of the space or the most of the space.
I would say that's another positive outcome of the pandemic, is it forced people again to go out and do things on their own in their own environment. I'm not going to give you a number, but Shopsmith also had a windfall with this. Okay. Their sales actually skyrocketed because people were doing more for themselves, and all of a sudden now they're buying more equipment, be it accessories or new machines, things like that. So it was good. That goes back to the days, because I was around, and you too, where the economy, was up and down and up and down. Anytime we had a really bad down economy, Shopsmith sales went up. Because now, instead of people hiring contractors to do this work, they go out and do it themselves. So that required a certain amount of equipment. And of course, we fell right in line with that. So same thing.
The week in October of 1987 that the stock market crashed was the week that the store that I was managing in Boston opened.
In Boston?
In Boston, and we had a record grand opening. We opened the same day that Philadelphia opened. And
let me tell you a story about this, since you mentioned the manager. Remember Harry Manios?
Yes, I helped to open his store in Tampa.
Well, he was like the guru rep for years of Shopsmith. And when I was brand new, all you heard was Harry Manios, a national saying. Well, who's this Harry Manios? He's kind of an arrogant son of a gun, but he could afford to be, because he was the guru. He was the top salesperson. And he finally got tired of many, many years out on the road. He went and did the store thing. But I always said, I'm going to be better than Harry Manios. And by golly, that happened. So,
well, he was also a heck of a golfer too.
Oh, we should talk about one other thing. We're talking about the infomercial.
Yeah.
And I've looked for it. The infomercial I did was not the first infomercial for Shopsmith. There's one that goes way further back, before we even called it an infomercial. It was a television program. An older gentleman, he built a table and a bowl for the table and one other project, all in 30 minutes. And at the end of it says, if you're interested, write to, literally write, not call, write to Shopsmith at this address, and I wish I could find that, because it was really well done. The guy built actual projects in 30 minutes. It was no hard, buy it today or the price will go up. And it was just, here's what the Shopsmith is. I'm going to make a table for you today. Let's go ahead and turn a bowl to put on the table. I haven't seen that since. I remember watching a long time ago.
Do you know who that was?
I don't know who the man was. Nothing. It might be in Shopsmith's archives, I guess. That's kind of like, it looks like I can share something here for you. Can I? Maybe not.
Yeah. You should be able to.
There's another. It's amazing how many people have been involved with shops. Let's see if I can share this. There he is. See if you know who that is. Know who that is? Can you see that?
Looks like Mr. Johnny Carson.
That's Johnny Carson. Did you know he owned a Shopsmith?
I don't remember him owning one, but it doesn't surprise me. Wow, look at that.
Well, you see, now Johnny Carson wasn't born to be the host of the Tonight Show. He originally was a magician out of Nebraska. You know, we're talking back in the 50s, and magicians used a lot of props. So guess what? Johnny built a lot of his props for his magic show on. There it is, right there.
Wow.
Of course, a lot of people know Andy Rooney from 60 Minutes. He was a big-time Shopsmith owner.
Yep.
Things like that.
And who gave Andy Rooney his Mark V? Or no, actually, he had a 10ER, right?
It might have been a TR going back that far. That was Arthur Godfrey.
Arthur Godfrey. That's exactly right.
Arthur Godfrey. So luckily, we got enough viewers, and our type of owners are old enough to remember all these people. Okay.
Yeah. Do you remember a guy who worked for Shopsmith for a while in the 80s, also a magician named Bruce Evans?
I do not. Bruce Evans, no.
So when I was in high school, I was an assistant to Bruce Evans, and he ended up at Shopsmith and did a tremendous demonstration that combined, obviously, the showmanship and artistry of being a magician. Very, very good, but it was short-lived, unfortunately, because Shopsmith wanted to get him in front of the camera. He wanted to negotiate his salary.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And you know how that goes. Yeah. So, all right, something that is a big interest of mine, and some of my viewers know this. I'm a huge fan of patents and new products, and especially a big nerd about Shopsmith tools. And you absolutely have a connection to the impetus of a Shopsmith product that unfortunately is no longer made. But I remember seeing you presenting this before it hit the market. Can you tell us a little bit about the development of the Crafter Station?
Well, that was my concept. That was my idea. I did. It was during a time where, like I say, shops were struggling a little bit. I remember going to John Folkers and said, John, we need to build our market with the female consumer. And he says, what are you talking about? He says, they're not going to use a Shopsmith. They're going to buy a Shopsmith. But at that same time, HGTV and the DIY stations were just getting big. And the gals were not waiting for hubby to do things for me. They wanted to do it themselves. But the Mark V was a little intimidating for them. I said, I got the solution, the Crafter Station. They want to do craft items. They're not building cabinets and things like that. And the Crafter Station never cut more than what, 1.5 inches thick anyway. That was the part of the design. So that was the whole impetus behind the Crafter Station, going after a market that just wanted to stay with crafts, thus the name. And if they wanted to expand on it, they could get the bandsaw, which I always thought they needed, especially a crafter needs a bandsaw to cut curves and what have you. And it took a little while to get John convinced of it, but he says, well, you might have something there. Go ahead and talk with our Dave Flora, who back then was the Jim McCann of the day. Remember Dave Flora? He was our engineer. Yes. And I said, can we take the power station and make it do this and that? And he was always a great guy. I think he might still go into the shop every now and then. He must be 85 or 90 something. Somebody told me he still comes in on occasion to use some of the shop stuff in there. But I worked with him for a long time, and we made the reversible motor, just kind of fun stuff. And we came up with the Crafter Station, the carriage that would take the table and what have you. And then they said, well, now who's going to sell it? Well, I don't want you using the Mark V personnel to do it. So I hired a whole new crew. Wow. And developed a whole new demonstration just for the Crafter Station. We went out on the road, just like the Mark V, in home shows and home shows and fairs mostly, and the thing just took off.
Now,
it took off so
this was
well.
Around 98, 99. When was this?
That might be right. Yeah, you should grab Debbie, and she remembers that stuff better than I do. Debbie, my wife, used to work for Shopsmith too, by the way. Debbie
okay.
Kress. Remember
Yes,
Debbie
remember
Kress?
Debbie Kress? Yes.
Yeah, she was a John's basically assistant for years, and she's got a memory like a steel trap. All right, we might have to bring her in here, but
Please
she would
do.
remember that kind of stuff. Well, hang on a second. Let's see if we can get her in here.
How did I not know that?
Debbie, come here, please. I just yelled at her. We'll see if she come in here. There've been a lot of nice husband-wife teams. Look at Doug and Susan.
Yeah, how did I not know that?
Oh, I don't know why. No, come here. She doesn't want to be on YouTube. We need your steel trap memory. When
Oh
did the
my
crafter
gosh.
station? When did I come up with the crafter station?
I would say it started germinating maybe about 97 or there.
You were
Hi,
right, Scott.
Debbie.
97. And I said, do you remember Scott?
Yeah.
Well, come in here and get in the camera.
How are
He
you
wants
doing?
to-
Good.
he didn't realize that you were John's assistant for many years.
No, I knew that. I didn't know that you guys were together.
Very.
And she was Barry Hiles and John's assistant. Remember Barry Hiles?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, she
I had
remembers all the
no
dates
idea.
and things like that. But we
It's so great to
took
see
that
you.
on the road and we did really, really well.
Well, you outperformed our 5 sales at the Texas State Fair. 98 or something.
Yeah, we outperformed the sales at the Texas State Fair, which was always one of our bigger events.
Wow.
And now Bob will probably see this video. We know this because it wasn't on the market much longer after that. I
Gotcha.
think
Mm.
if I remember, and I'll give Bob the benefit of the doubt here. I think he didn't want to confuse the consumer, thinking that the crafter station was the Mark V.
Yeah.
Wasn't that kind of?
Well, yeah, they were. It was confusing, and Mark was their product.
That was their bread and butter. So he
Yeah.
didn't want to mess that up. And maybe one day you get to talk to Bob and you can
Yeah.
address that.
The story we presumed too, between all of us, was Larry Blank didn't like, because he was heading the field at that time, and he wasn't happy.
Gotcha.
It was just confusing. I think.
Yeah. So it was short lived, but I still think it was a new product. It needed, needed more things. It needed, more time to
Yeah.
evolve into something great. But it proved my point. There was a market for it. And secondly, the women did love it. All right. And it could sell really, really well. Kind of leads us into, now I know what you're going to ask next, the Mark IV.
You do know exactly. Yeah. So tell me about the Mark IV. And
Well,
Debbie, thank you
again,
for answering our question.
No. Well, with the advent of the Power Pro, and this is certainly not my idea, what I'm going to mention. You had guys buying Power Pros and had a perfectly good headstock sitting on their machine, old headstock. What do we do with it, Mike? I don't know. Sell it. It should sell pretty easily, but that was my stock answer for the first 3, 4, 5 years of the Power Pro. Then all of a sudden, my owners, these guys are bright. They're sharp as hell. They start talking about Shorties.
Mhm.
I go, what the hell's a Shorty?
Yeah.
And some guy brings a picture and said, you chopped your Mark V in half. I said, yeah, pretty much. But now I've got a beautiful accessory stand, better than a power station. I got a greater variable speed. I got more horsepower than the power station. You ever wonder why the power station not available anymore? There's the reason.
Yeah.
Because guys would take their old headstocks and turn them into an accessory stand. And so I thought, well, Shopsmith needs to actually start doing something with a Shorty. They came up with the Shop Deputy, which is a good product. It's a way to repurpose everything you're replacing when you upgrade from a 5 to a 7. You're going to have a headstock and you're going to have 2 castings. Rather than throwing them out, letting them sit idle, you turn them into something useful. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Mhm.
So nothing goes to waste. But the Shorties, I like the Shorties, and I had one till it got stolen. I like the height. It's the same height as the Mark, of course,
Yeah.
obviously. You got casters on it. When I had my Shorty, I used that thing more than I used the Mark. I really did. But it was about 6 months ago. It's always about stimulating new users and interest in the mark, creating more, more consumers. What do we need to do? So they had the idea of bringing back the mark. What do they call it? 520S, the old motor. So there's the 520. They said, you need to start building a shorty. And they did do it. They took my idea. They didn't do it quite the way I wanted them to. You got a stripped down. If you buy just a stripped down unit, you got a motor on 2 leg panels. So you're forced to buy something, a saw, a package, a drill package, whatever it might be. And that's good too. I like that idea because it, number one, gets someone who's really on a budget into woodworking in some fashion. Most people, the first tool they buy for woodworking is a table saw. You got to cut your lumber down to size. So you could get the Mark IV and buy the saw package. You can cut wood at least. You want to go beyond that, you got an expandable system. For years, Shopsmith's logo was the system to start with, the system to grow with. Well, if I sell a guy a Mark VII, he's got everything, really. But the Mark IV really becomes the system to start with and the system to grow with. How big do you want to make it? I mean, down the road, if you had every one of those packages and then wanted a full Mark VII, all I got to do then is buy, the weight tubes and support tubes, and you got a full blown. So I like that. I told them, though, if you want to really make this thing work, change the color too. Shorty, I said, make it a platinum. That was another thing we went through years ago. Dave Floor, in fact, was involved in that. I told John, I said, we're going back to the old Jet days where Jet changed the color of their equipment to white.
Yes.
Did nothing else, and their sales skyrocketed. I said, why can't we do the same thing? My idea came from the first Apple computers, those odd shaped looking things. They had all the different colored computers. Remember that? I said, why can't we do that? So they actually painted up 5 or 6 Mark Vs, one all black, the teal green, like the scroll saw.
I saw the teal and black one.
Green.
Yes.
And the best one that I came up, we got great photos of that. I think Bob still has them too, was the platinum one. It was like a beautiful chrome silver thing. Looked fantastic. It looked like a whole different machine. It looked like a modern machine. I suggested that on the Mark IV. I said, your sales are going to go up just because of the color. And they still might do that. I don't know, but we'll see. And call it the Platinum Edition. It's a great starter pack. I like the Mark IV. The idea was to create a shorty that people can buy as a new product. They can put a Power Pro on it. It comes standard with the old 1 1/8 horsepower motor. Still a great motor, don't get me wrong. So it's a great way to start out small and build as you need and as you can afford. So I think it's a great idea. There hadn't been a lot of positive response, like on the forum and what have you. People don't get it, but you got to think more marketing and kind of get people into the fold of woodworking and into collecting their tools.
I'm always surprised by the people that'll jump onto, like, let's say the Shopsmith users group on Facebook or Shopsmith owners group, and they'll be trying to sell their equipment. You're taking a tool to people who already have the tool, and then you're trying to get what it's worth. They don't want to pay what it's worth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the fact that the owners aren't thrilled with it doesn't mean a thing, right? Doesn't matter.
Although when it comes to selling new machines, I sell 95% of the new machines I sell every year are to Shopsmith owners. Not more than, what time is it? Not more than 2 hours ago, I sold a gentleman a Mark VII with a lift assist, a DC 6000. What else he had on there? A jointer. One other thing on there, some ceramic sandpaper. And he already has a Mark V. That's who I sell mostly all year long.
That is incredible.
They like the Power Pro. They love their old machine, But now the kid's old enough that he got his own home and he wants a machine too. So dad gives the old machine to the kid. He's got a brand new Power Pro. Or the guy just has this particular gentleman. He's 80 years old, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. He has a home in Southern California, another place in the Midwest. He's got his old machine in the Midwest. The one he bought today from me is going to California. So I have a lot of that too. Now, my customer base for the last 10, 15 years are owners. I think we need to take care of our owners because they alone will create new owners. That's always been my philosophy. I take care of them real well.
That's a very, very good point. So how about life on the road? Give me an interesting story about life on the road, Mike.
Man, I've probably forgotten more of those stories than anything.
That's safe.
There's some I kind of mentioned briefly to you with being robbed. Dan Bach was a rep out of Denver. He was also a store manager for many years out of the Denver store, Aurora, Colorado store. But we had just set up, I think it was in Albuquerque for the fair. And we're in a pizza joint having dinner before heading back to the hotel. And I'm facing Dan. Dan's facing the door and the counter. And Dan says, Mike, without making a big deal of it, take your wallet out and throw it on the floor. We're in a booth. I said, excuse me? He says, we're being robbed. I said, what? And I turned, of course, like you would. Two guys with the hoods and everything, guns. And the first thing they do is they hit the cashier, take their money, and they went to every one of the tables and said, empty your pockets out. They took our money, off they went, but they didn't get our wallets because Dan saw them coming in. He said, take your wallet out, throw it on the floor. I don't have a wallet. So that's one that stands out. The Puyallup Fair, that was our third largest event every year. Ran 17, 18 days. Lots and lots of people coming in all the time. We're just mobbed, especially on the weekends. So I had one of those mobs in front of me. Older gentleman standing literally. Remember, we used to have the glass screen.
Yes.
He was right in front. He really wanted to see this. So I start up at the lathe. I'm looking at him. You kind of talk to the person closer to you. I'm talking to him. And throughout the presentation for the first 10 minutes, I see him getting whiter and whiter. The complexion got whiter and whiter and pastier and pastier. I thought, wow, this guy's, I noticed it to the point where, hope this guy doesn't drop mine. Well, guess what he did? He dropped on me. He actually got real dizzy. There's enough people that it kind of broke his fall in a way, but he still hit his head on the concrete. And I still remember that sound. And he started bleeding out of his ears.
Oh.
And he died right there.
Oh my gosh.
I actually had a guy die at one of my demonstrations. And then every year after that, for many years, because we were always in the same location, Modern Living Building, we had that blood stain that soaked into that concrete. Oh yeah. So every time we looked down for years, we remembered that gentleman that literally died in front of the Shopsmith. So those are about the most exciting ones that I can tell you. Other than that, yeah, it's a gruesome and grueling life.
Yeah.
Nobody's been on the road longer than me, so I can tell you from experience. We lost a lot of good people because they just couldn't handle the travel because they had families and whatever. A lot of good people that could have really done amazing things for shops and did in a short time with it. They just couldn't handle, the travel. 7 years was about the average, I think, is what we came up with.
I remember every time a sales rep would come into the Boston area, I would always make sure that they had dinner on the store, and that we went and made sure that they had everything that they needed, replace any parts that they needed, because I knew they were going to be sending people my way, and those people were going to be needing training, and I'm going to make my share off of them. And likewise, they're making money for the company. And boy, what a rough life for some of them.
That was the sad thing about shops, losing their stores or selling them off and closing them up. Because, well, Puyallup is a good example. The store people there would really support us and we'd support them. It was nice to tell a consumer, once you got the machine, you can go right up to Bellevue. In the old days, it was a different location, and we'll teach you how to use the damn thing. Who else can do that? You know, same thing. And we used to do in-store promotion too. The reps would come in and do like in a mall what we did,
Yeah.
but do it in the store. Did that a lot for Dave Bullard in Utah, the Utah store, Seattle store. Can't remember his name. A lot of managers though. Fun
We used
stuff.
to have a little badge that would say, "Ask me to make sawdust," because we were happy to. You know, somebody has a question about the joiner, we show them how to use a joiner. You go into Sears, there's no outlets near the tools. They're afraid of anybody turning the tools on.
I remember that when I was new with shop, I would go into a Sears and on purpose say, "I like to look at the saw. Can you turn it on for me and cut board?" Oh, we're not allowed to do that, you know? So, yeah, what do you do?
Exactly. So I asked Doug a question. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. If Shopsmith were to bring back a tool that's currently discontinued, what would you like to sell?
First, air compressor.
Really?
Boom. Did you ever see the air compressor?
Oh, I owned both versions of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you had to have the whole thing, the air compressor with the gun and the hose.
Yeah.
Because the gun was, when they first came out, was top of the line.
Yeah.
I mean, to buy the same kind of, it would shoot anything. I mean, finished stuff. You could, I remember when that came out in advertising, they had a guy with his Mark V in the driveway, long hose, he's painting his fence with that. That was great. But I had one time, loved it. And for whatever reason, taking care of a car, he wanted to trade something for it. And I traded. I don't even remember what I traded for, but that's the last time I ever had my hands on that air compressor. It was great. The original air, they had two air compressors. They had the original one,
Yeah.
that's the one I'm talking about.
The
And
original
another
one
one that
was
was on
the
the market.
sprayer by Magna. And then the second one was a Campbell Hausfeld compressor.
Oh, that's it. Yes. That first one, that gun was beautiful. That thing worked good.
Yeah.
And then the Joint-Matic would be my second choice. That was a tool that had to be demonstrated, number one. But man, it really did a job for complex joinery. The Joint-Matic was incredible.
So I've done a couple of videos. I haven't completed that series on the Joint-Matic. And the one thing I haven't shared yet was a couple guys that I knew from the Dayton area came up with some really clever ideas. One of which was they made some magnetic templates that they would stick onto the scale. So yes, you're still counting turns, but you can't miss because there was only a mark here and a mark here. And you can see that you're a 16th of an inch off.
Oh, yeah.
Where if I'm counting and I lose count, I can mess up a joint.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And
Absolutely.
I think that they approached Shopsmith, but unfortunately it was near the end of the run of the Joint-Matic, so nothing came of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was
We've had a lot of good products. I lost a lot of products. Like that, I had a Shorty for a short time. I was in Chicago. Like I say, I spent a lot of time there because I would work the Midwest and the East at Lowe's, traveling around. Always parked in the same spot where I live, and went out one day and no van. They got the van. They got a Honu Mark 7 bandsaw joiner, belt center planer, Shorty, and things I'd collected over the years that aren't available that I would use in my seminars. You know, and lost all of it.
Oh my gosh.
That's not a good travel story, by the way. We've had
No,
a
that's
few of
not.
those. I remember one other time coming out after doing a home show in Arlington, Texas. There was a rep we had living there, and I was living in Boise, and we were done with the event. So Monday morning we'd get on an airplane and head for home. So early I'd get out. I'm waiting for Tim, his name was. So he must go get gas or something. He's going to drive home after dropping me off the airport. And Tim comes out of his hotel and, "Where's the van?" "Well, I thought you took the van." "No, I thought you had the van." We walked over the
my
parking
gosh.
spot and there was the lock laying on the ground. So that van, it sat in the same parking lot that these people stole it for over 4 months before there was a little strip mall. Somebody in the strip mall finds, "You guys going to come and get this Shopsmith van that's been here for 4 months?" So you're kidding me. Because it was emptied of all the goods, but
What would have been more impressive if the guy that stole it was out doing demos for those months?
no. Oh, that's when we had marked vans. Remember that? I designed the graphics to go on the vans because the leadership at that time said all of our vans are going to be, moving billboards. And we said, you don't want to do that. Everybody said, you don't want to do that for that reason. Everybody knows what a Shopsmith is, right?
Yeah.
Go to a pawn shop. You see a Shopsmith. And as soon as we started marking up those vans, we started getting thefts. So yeah,
So
that was
there was a
interesting.
time where the vans were also towing a trailer.
Oh,
What
you want to go down that
what
road, really?
well, what was happening? I don't remember what was being shown. What was happening there?
Well, that's so we could carry the entire catalog. You know, both planers, I mean, everything, scrolls, they were jammed full. And we're supposed to set all that stuff up in a mall or a home show. That's what it was for, so you could haul more equipment to show. A nightmare. It caused some serious problems for a couple of reps. I don't know if you remember Kurt Bennett. He was driving up to the Minnesota State Fair, pulling that trailer on the freeway and got sideways with some heavy wind, and he rolled the trailer and the van and messed him up for the rest of his life.
Ooh,
Yeah, bad accidents.
sounds like it. I do have a really important question to ask you. I want to make sure I don't forget to ask this, and that is today's Shopsmith with Michael Young. Tell me about your YouTube channel.
Very new YouTube channel. Certainly not going to compete with something like you or even Doug. I don't want anything to do with that kind of stuff. I said, I'll go ahead and do a TV formatted show where I build a project or two sometimes every episode. Because my people said, yeah, there's great. We see Scott all the time. He gives us tips on, setting up the bandsaw and doing this and doing that. And Doug shows us how to use the sharpening guy. That's all great. Show us how to use the machine in an actual project.
Yeah.
I said, well, if nobody's doing that, I guess I can. Said, I'm not going to do a lot of episodes because I'm still a full-time salesperson. I'm still a full-time student, So I'm going to have, it looks like 3 episodes for this season, as opposed to 30 episodes for a season. And I never really anticipated having more than 6, but I did. The COVID kind of shut me down on one episode I wanted to do because in episode 2 of season 1, a couple of times I'm advertising, if you want me to come visit your shop, send me. And you wouldn't believe how many requests. But then the Delta came back and I said, no, I can't do this. So, and other people said, you said you're going to come and see me. We set up a time, but can we do it later? Because we're kind of worried about the COVID. So that was one episode gone right there because there were some great things we were going to be able to see.
It's a really good idea.
And I'll do that maybe next summer. We'll see. But that's the whole idea behind that. I've been pleased with the response and the comments on it. So it's working. Even in last Friday's Zoom sales presentation, the guy said, I saw your episode and it's done very well. And it's what we've always wanted to see is the Shopsmith being used in actual project building, not little parts of a project from start to finish. What kind of lumber you're using? What's the lumber or the building plans look like? Things like that. So that's the whole idea behind that.
That's great.
And I base the projects because what I do every year is say, here's what I want to build this year. And you never get to all of them, of course. I still got my cigar box guitar I want to make. That was on this year's list. That's going to go to next year. I'm going to build a new boat, I think. That's going to be a long project. What was some of the other ones I wanted to do? I got to make some carts for some of the other equipment I got stashed around in here. But I wanted to do the guitar and I wanted to definitely do the boat and what have you too. But those things are going to have to wait.
There's no end to shop organization though.
Yeah. And it took a lot just to be able to do the Zoom and make sure it's all, organized and what have you.
Yeah.
This was probably my latest, biggest project, all these cabinets. And I don't know if you've seen any of these things in here.
Oh yeah.
All the cabinets and what have you I have here.
Very nice.
Let me flip this around. Yeah, you can see this stuff. But everything's stored inside the cabinets. The shop.
And look at that. You can even fit a car in your shop.
Well, I do get a car in here. That's the idea. This is a garage. But it's a big TV studio. I thought I could flip this around, maybe not. It's a big TV studio. It's got soundproofing tiles on the garage door, up on the ceiling.
Oh, nice.
It's heat and air conditioned now with the mini split we had to put in here. It's 43 outside right now. It's 72 inside here. A viewing area to watch you, of course. But it's still a full shop. I'm working on, I just refinished this bicycle. I don't know if you see that. Can you see that?
I can
Yeah.
see it. Did you build that?
Yeah, this is the frame. It's been refinished 3 times. I'm getting ready for a big wood show they have here in Boise or Idaho, I guess, in April. Been postponed now twice because of COVID.
Now, Mike, was that strip laminated, or is it bent Baltic birch, or how did you go about that?
Very good. It's 1/8-inch pieces of Baltic birch. I don't know why this camera. Hang on a second. Let me get this flipped around here. Let's see what I'm showing you.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Yeah, that's about 110 pieces total of 1/8-inch Baltic birch, bent around 2 forms. One was a bottom form, upper form, separate form for the saddle, the center here, and what attaches both pieces up here. And then there's about 12 coats of lacquer here. I literally finished 2 days ago this real high gloss wet finish. It's a paint color that I kind of came up on my own.
Oh,
But it's done.
okay, so that's paint. That looks like a plastic laminate. That's really
It
chunky.
does, doesn't it? You know how you do that? It's you're painting this on like water. It's 50% mineral spirits, 50% pigment. So it's going on really, really, really light. And you wet sand in between every 4th coat. There's about 16 coats of paint on here.
Wow,
It looks like
beautiful.
glass, doesn't it?
It sure does.
And hopefully, the reason I redid it, I had a couple little specks that I didn't like. So this is still a full shop here that I do what I call fun stuff now. I mean,
That's neat, Mike.
to me, this time you want to do fun stuff. Up now here, let me go back here. You want to talk about fun stuff. Flip that back around. You see up here? The piece
you
up
got
here
your-
that I'm most proud of is that little cradle. That came out of a popular science project book. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
And that piece right there is 37 years old.
Oh, my
I
goodness.
built that the day my daughter was born. I swear to God. I did it all. After she was born, they say, go home, leave mom and kid alone. I went home and built that. On the way back to have dinner with new daughter and wife at the hospital, I bought her first doll. And that first doll was actually in that cradle too. So that's, to me, if somebody says, what can I build with the Shopsmith and why? That's the reason right there.
Yeah.
This is why we get into woodworking. That creates real memories.
I was just going to say,
That
you
was
built
me showing
memories.
off the old mini mark there. I built that maybe the 2nd year I was with Shopsmith because the plans were available and I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And then going back to the daughter, I remember in the garage, I was on Christmas break with Shopsmith. We're in the garage, and this was out of popular science project book too. The whole train set out of wood. My daughter did a lot of that turning. She was about 7 years old then, and most of the sanding. So this is why you get into woodworking. That's why you want to shop, because it will do anything from cabinet work to real fine work, obviously. And to be honest with you, that's why I've been with Shopsmith for 38 years.
Awesome.
It's a feeling you get, you don't get with anything other kind of product. Now, you asked Doug, in fact, about the types of prospects we see. Our people are part of a cult. It's a 1 million member and growing cult, and they are so loyal. And every one of them, other than that 1% you were talking about, are fantastic people. And I've learned more from those folks than I'll ever be able to help and teach them. That's for certain. How long? Why do you stay with a company that long? It's unheard of nowadays. because it's a good company. It's a great product. They stand by it. And I personally love it. And it's given me memories that, you can't buy.
Yep. By the way, I did not say 1%. It was Doug that said 1%. I wasn't going to put a number on it.
That's okay. That's right. Even the bad guys, sometimes we used to run into those people. Yeah. Some of the things that come in and say, well, you give me a better deal, can't you? Well, no, this is the sale price. Well, I'm not going to buy it then. Well, okay. Because if I offered it to you at a lower price, then that's not fair to the guy that just, stood up and walked away with his new order. So that wouldn't be fair. So that's some ethics involved there too. Yeah. So I think Shopsmith has always been a very ethical company. They don't mess around. Here's the sale price, or there's no sale price. That's what it is. We're not going to deal with you. Yeah. So that's what I've enjoyed about them also.
Well, I loved my time working at Shopsmith. Like you say, the people, the customers are tremendous. The coworkers that we've had over the years were just top of the line folks. And working in an industry where people are able to use their creativity and use their hands, that's hard to beat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've had great people with Shopsmith. We really have. You can probably remember John Hiddle in the Dayton store. He was
Ron Hiddle. Yes, I remember Ron Hiddle.
Excuse me. John was his brother. He became a field rep. I get them mixed up. Ron Hiddle. Yes.
Gotcha.
Ron and John. Yeah.
Ron was in me.
No, did he? Okay. Yeah. I love that man. I really did. Dave Flora, people like that. Yes. Oh yeah. Great people. Some of the reps that come to mind, that came to work for us that probably shouldn't have, but ended up being great. Again, Kurt Bennett. He was a fighter pilot in Vietnam. Very smart guy. He had a very unusual selling style. He'd start out every demo, he'd look up board, and he had this rough, gruff cigar smoke. You want to know why your woodworking sucks? That's how he'd start a demonstration. And he was serious. You ain't got the right equipment. You don't even have a straight board. He started every demo with a joiner, as opposed to we'd always were taught to start with the lathe. He started with the joiner. He did real well with Shopsmith. Retired, and he ended up. He's since passed away here a couple of years ago, I'm afraid. He ended up writing poetry, published poetry, and teaching at the University of Kansas. So we had some real brainiacs. Of course, we had people that are on PBS TV shows right now that started out as Shopsmith. Scott Phillips. Yeah. I remember playing croquet with him at a I think it was a sales meeting one time.
At Pinehurst.
He was a Shopsmith employee then. Now he's been, what did I just see? 26 years on PBS now.
Crazy.
And he's as nice in person as he is on TV.
Yeah, he really is.
And I'll say another thing about that Roy Underhill. I think he's pulling our leg.
We'll wrap this up. I really appreciate you making time for this conversation. It's great to catch up with you. And again, I will link to your channel. And I believe you have contact information on the About page. Is that right? Can folks get in touch with you for Zoom meetings and things through your YouTube
Absolutely.
channel?
They can sign up for a presentation. Just go to the Shopsmith website right on their homepage. You can register for one of my things, or you can email me. It's all on my stuff, even on the episodes, myoung@shopsmith.com.
Very good.
It's real simple to remember. Right. M. Young. This has been great, Scott.
I'm looking forward to hearing. I've looked at you for
years. Like I say, you're the most prolific poster I know, but the posts are all really, really good. I think it was episode 1. I'm saying if you're going to get on the internet to learn how to use a machine, you got to be careful, because there's literally tens of thousands of people out there posting and doing this, but you got to pick the right ones. So I mentioned you, I always mention Doug. I don't really know of anybody else that does it as well as you or Doug.
Well, you're very
I'll
kind.
say that out loud.
I told you I'd probably edit some things out of this video. Somehow or another, that's going to stay in.
Well, I hope it does. Absolutely. I'll promote you every chance I get.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I'll do the same. And, what's important here is that people can safely use their equipment, right? And if we can help people get better use out of their tools, then that's mission accomplished for me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That is something to always remember about the shop. They've always been keen on safety, probably more so than anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely right. All right. Well, thanks, Mike. We'll see you in an upcoming video. And for the rest of you, make it a
All
great
right.
day.
We'll talk again maybe sometime.